Please note, we would like to make it very clear, we are totally against the form of discipline described in the articles and accounts being used on minors and non-consenting adults. Although some of these accounts are fictional, and others may be an exaggerated reality, none of them are too far from the truth of what really happened back in those days. If you are enjoying our stories, please do subscribe to this channel. We will be posting many more stories as time goes by.
Michelle's paddling. Hi, my name is Michelle and this is one of my real-life experiences. I hope you enjoy it. I am rather curious what folks think about my story. I was raised on a farm and knew the meaning of hard work. I helped my mom around the house, helped some with the livestock, and when I got old enough, drove the truck when we loaded hay. My parents were hardworking, conservative, and religious. My grandfather, my mother's dad, was a preacher. I may have been a girl and an only child, but I was certainly not spoiled. My parents believed in the phrase, "spare the rod and spoil the child." Actually, it was a paddle, not a rod. The paddle was made of wood and was about 1.5 feet long. It was kept on top of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I remember several occasions when I felt that hard would smack my bottom and the searing pain that radiated across my rear. One of the most embarrassing spankings was also one of the last ones I got. My mom and I were outside shucking corn. Often I wore a plain, cotton dress, but sometimes I wore slacks and at times I was allowed to wear shorts. This particular day I had on shorts. My favorite aunt had dropped by and she was talking with us as we sat in the shade of pecan trees, me on a small bench and my mom in a chair. As I pulled back a shuck to expose the ear, a huge worm was inside. Now, finding a worm was no big deal, but this one was fat and yucky. Before I knew what I was doing I hollered, "Oh God," except I stretched out the syllables a bit. As soon as I said it I knew I was in big trouble. "What did you say?" my mom barked out. I didn't mean to," I stuttered. "You know better than that. Go get the paddle right now," she ordered. My eyes began to water as I headed for the house. I went into the kitchen and retrieved the hard, wooden paddle. I hoped that my aunt would leave before I returned outside, but as I went out the door I saw through my tears that they were both still there. I approached the two ladies, handed Mom the paddle and begged her not to spank me. My pleading did no good as she just ordered me to turn around and bend over on that bench. I turned around, leaned over and placed my hands on the bench. I was deeply embarrassed to be bent over in front of them like this, with my bottom and thighs presenting such a wonderful target for the paddle. I didn't have time to think long before the paddle swung through the air and landed firmly across the middle of both cheeks. "Ow, ow." I shrieked and both hands flew around to rub the sting out of my rear. "Bend over," my mom yelled, and once more my hands went down. This time the paddle struck just below the imprint of the first one, on the lower cheeks of my rear. "Walk!" I hollered again and jumped up to rub frantically. I began to cry and once again beg her to stop. My butt was on fire from just those 2 licks, but there were more to come. "Move your hands," she commanded, but I just couldn't. "No, Mom, please, no more," I cried, still covering myself. The paddle suddenly struck again, this time across the top of my left leg, just below my shorts. I really screamed then. My mom grabbed my left arm and held it out of the way as she swung the wood paddle again, this time striking my right leg, in that tender area just below my butt. "Ow, ow, oh Mom, please stop." I sobbed through my tears. I was hollering, crying and running around her in a circle as she held me tight and smacked my legs with the paddle. After 3 licks to my legs, I assumed somewhat of a squatting position with my hands grasping my upper legs, which were on fire. That left my bottom once again exposed and the paddle found an area that it had missed, just above where the first smack had left its imprint across the middle of my butt. During this time I heard a vehicle go by on the road, only about 15 yards from where I was getting my backside torn up. I remember the added embarrassment, thinking it was probably someone who knew me, maybe even a classmate at school. I received about 8 licks with the paddle that day and was ordered inside to wash my face. Then I heard my mom telling me to finish and get back outside, that I had work to finish. I returned and finished shucking the corn. Needless to say, I stood up to finish my work. I was deeply embarrassed to have been paddled outside and in front of people, but that wasn't the end. When my dad got in from the field, I was inside but still hadn't had time to change clothes. Mom informed him of the infraction as I lowered my head and slightly turned away. Of course, he could see where the paddle had left its marks on my legs. At dinner that night I had to sit down, but it sure wasn't easy. I did not wear shorts for a while after that because I didn't want anyone to see my bruised legs. That was the last time I got the paddle, but not the last time I got spanked. My dad whipped me one time later with his belt.